Yeah, making a video. So I guess a little bit of logistical stuff first. I'll point out on these videos sometimes when I make a video on some other channel that I made a video on some other channel just to help those videos out a little bit. So I did make a draft science video on physics stuff, and so I'll post a link in the comments or in the description if you're interested. And I'm still going to do a video response to Day eventually. Regarding his notions of what consciousness is. He claims animals aren't conscious. Apparently humans before language were not conscious. Amazing. Anyway, stupid. Yeah, it does sound rude, doesn't it? And that's the air cleaner. I have to videotape that sometimes. The electrical discharges are just so interesting. So many things I have to do. I have to turn my Christmas tree back on. I miss it. Anyway. Alright, well, it's not technically a Christmas tree. It's a poinsettia bush. Yeah. Let's make that clear. I don't believe in Christmas. So anyway, this is a video response to a video by poodlesusan, partly. Very, it's long and, a little tedious in terms of this language thing. But it's these words again. Words. And how we understand the language and how we communicate. So she was responding to the Skeptical Heretic and this very long comment thread, basically about the ideas of objective versus relativistic ethics. And, they keep using the word morality, which I just don't think is a good way to put things. But anyway, it's the value equation. What's the real world of value in the universe? If we're going to say what is really value in the universe, I think it's absolutely ludicrous to say there's no such thing, because then you've basically equivalentized preposterously silly ideas like, 5-year-old kid eating ice cream, 5-year-old kid trapped under a flaming gas truck. I think any sensible brain can say, wait a minute, I can tell those two things apart, and I know they're not in the same kind of value category. One is not a good thing, and one is probably a good thing. And you can say that with really rock solid assurance. As clear as the sun is hot. And somebody, see, even these little things, when you say like the sun is hot, it's accurate in all contexts. There's no context where the sun isn't hot. Or, relativistically it's hot compared to everything else in the universe. It's hot relative to our world, certainly. Everything human, it's certainly hot too. There's just no way you could avoid hot as being an appropriate thing to call the sun. It doesn't need any relativistic context bullshit. It's always hot. It really is. It's just stupid to sit there and play these games, but that's what all this is about. It's about word games. So it really happens here. It just starts right at the beginning. So Skeptical Heretic, poodlesusan, nonsense. Describe rights that exist free of laws. So it's his contention that when somebody advocates for rights, you can't advocate for a right. You can only advocate for law, and that there is nothing deeper in terms of the meaning of the word right than something acknowledged to be your possession. Like some authority walked up to you and said, you're bestowed. You have the badge of a right. And you didn't have that right until I give you the badge. So the slaves had no rights before they were acknowledged by society. They couldn't say, I have a right to my dignity. And no, you don't, because we haven't given it to you, so you don't have it. There's no such claim of a right. And so that's where this word just gets totally broken. It doesn't mean anything now. So, where I was thinking of the word right as being an acknowledgement of an entitlement. So a right is an acknowledgement of something. A right isn't something you possess, it's true. It's not something you have. It's an acknowledgement of something you have. It's recognizing that you do possess something called an entitlement. So now we will give you the rights consistent with your entitlement. And what's your entitlement to? Well, then you can go back to, you can dissect further to words like fairness and consent. These are the things that we're entitled to because we have this sentient thing and this individual welfare thing. And excuse me. Sorry. you know, they had this ear, nose, and throat problem for 6 months. It's always like, you know, this stupid e-cigarette shit thing, I think. Bad juice or something, I don't know. But I don't know what it is. Me and cigarettes got along so well. I looked better, I felt better. These fucking Nazi bastards. I really do want to take all the anti-smokers and just shove them into the ocean and say, fuck you. I hate your motherfucking cunt guts. How dare you tell me what I can and cannot do in my own fucking house, you fucking Nazi bastards. Disgusting. So anyway, it's beside the point, but it's on the point in the sense that we offend each other's sense of entitlement all the time. And the argument is about where does the entitlement really originate? Where does the value originate? And you know, I think it would be ludicrous to argue that anything somebody can make up, any Donald Duck, Bugs Bunny cartoon they can make up, is relativistically legitimate. That we can't make any kind of rational distinction between preposterous nonsense rights and logically defensible, rock-solid, hard case, factually evidence-based arguments for, you know, that just can't be logically attacked. I don't think, like I said, like my fundamental premise, I don't think you can logically attack the fundamental premise that it's better that a sentient being, in and of itself, be in a good condition, a comfortable condition, than an uncomfortable condition. That there's no rational, logical, sensible, coherent sentences or paragraphs that could be conformed to ever defend suffering that has no utility, that doesn't prevent some greater suffering. So unless you can make the argument that it prevents a greater suffering, there's just no logical way to defend sentience in pain as anything other than a bad thing. If you have the choice, if you have a free choice, a non-energy consuming choice of having it in one state or the other state, there would be absolutely no way to construct any kind of rational argument for having it in a negative state. And I think that's just an indicator that that's where this thing begins. That's where the solid foundation you can step on to start building an argument. But I mean, it has to start with some kind of coherent language, some sort of language that has meaning, that has definition. So I think the concept of value is just, you know, having the scale thing or something, you know, and recognizing that there's, if it tips one way is bad and when it tips the other way is good. So that's rock solid. You know, and now we're just saying what's on the scale. What are the things you put on the scale to decide weight? And I think it's rock solid to argue that the weights we're putting on the scale, the material the weights are made out of, is sentience in distress. That if we look into the entire universe, there's nothing else we can find that matters more than sentience in distress. There's just, I can look everywhere in this room, I can look everywhere in the sky, I can look everywhere in my imagination, I can look into galaxies and all kinds of swirly stuff, and there's just no evidence of anything being more meaningful than sentience and its welfare. There's just no evidence of anything else. Is there evidence of something else? Let me hear what that would be. I haven't heard a single statement describing something more important than a sentient sensation as being the origins of anything called meaningful or valuable. Nothing else is intrinsically without. If the earth disappeared, what in the universe could you worry about? What possibly could concern you? Except if it had a uterus. If the universe had a uterus, then you could be concerned because there's now going to be a potential problem. So I'll get to that argument, because that was a real, you know, the skeptical heretic is such a fucking weasel. So, I mean, I'd like to say something derogatory and insulting about, you know, he announced that he's going to be a father. Right, so in this same comment thread, he gets into a little thing with Skid Row Radio, whatever his new name is, or his old name, yeah, Ujama Flipper. It's funny, people get rid of old names when I can finally say them right, which is also funny. I mean, I finally get to the point where I can say Ujama Flipper pretty quickly, and he doesn't use that name anymore. But anyway, you know, and it's the same tactic of like the Anaconda VODs too. These little one sentence, like it's our obligation. Define what you mean by objective. Oh, come on, we've been through this. You know, you just do that little simple shit instead of actually making an argument. You just do this one sentence crap, obliging the other person to provide more explanation. You know, instead of ever coming up with the counter argument, which was, oh yeah, what was your counter argument to the fact that you can't impossibly argue against protecting the welfare of a sentient in a closed system? If you have a free choice between two things, you can't make a rational argument for not making the right choice. Oh, that's right. You know, instead of dealing with that, they move on to something else, conveniently. So anyway, so he's going to have this kid thing, right? So he's announced that. But at the same time, he's saying that the welfare of a child doesn't start till it's sentient, till it's born. Then it doesn't have any meaningful welfare or meaningful interest. And certainly in the trail of impacts on it, somehow it doesn't mean anything until it's here. So until you have the child's here, you can't claim any interest were ever involved until you turn it on, kind of a thing. So it's like he's almost arguing that, you know, if I'm building a nuclear power plant and I'm building it completely wrong, it's going to blow up. It's probable that it will blow up. You can't stop me from building it logically. You can't make a claim against me building it. Or in fact, the fact that it's automatically going to be turned on, because that's the only way to test it, is to turn it on. And so, you know, he'll concede that these are facts of the circumstance. So here's the facts of the circumstance. I build it. It's a piece of shit. It will be turned on, and it's all, in all probability, no reason to believe otherwise, it will blow up and melt down. And he'll argue that before it blows up and melt down, before you turn some period of time after you turn it on, you have no right to argue with what I'm doing. Now, I have no obligation to recognize the fact that the meltdown will happen and it will cause suffering, because it's not happening when I'm building it. I didn't say that as exactly how I wanted to say it, but you get my gist, right? I mean, he's claiming he has no responsibility to account for what will be. It's not a doubtful, like a major doubt, right? Just as he says, I'm going to be a father. Well, what do you mean you're going to be a father? How do you know you're going to be a father? You're not a father yet. The baby's not born yet. How could you possibly know you're going to be a father if it's not? I don't see any baby. Where's the baby? Show me the baby. You're not a father. How do you know that's going to be the future? You're telling Ujama Flipper he can't say your baby will be conscious. You're saying that's an outrageous thing to surmise. It's not. Even though it's absolutely probabilistic that will be the outcome, that your child will be conscious being, you're saying he can't say it will be. You're saying will be is not a legitimate consideration. That what you know will be, or what you know is highly probable, somehow doesn't. We shouldn't involve ourselves with theories about what is probable before we do something. So if I have bad brakes in my car, well, my car hasn't run anybody over, so therefore I should ignore the probabilistic consequences of having bad brakes and just drive it anyway, because there's no certainty that it will run somebody over. It's only highly probable, and that doesn't mean anything, right? So I mean, it's that kind of argument. You're just saying, why would people resort to an argument that lame? And you're just saying, but that's how weak their position is. Their position is so absolutely weak that they can't deal with the facts. They can't deal with the truth of the matter, which is they are asserting a positive right, as skeptical heretic would put it, a right that somehow, which really just means impositional rights. So he's claiming that we have these impositional rights, and that he has this impositional right to create human beings. Okay? It was bestowed by something. Ability. So now we're back to the argument that if we're all born with, you know, little acid guns in our forehead, that somehow because I have an acid gun I can just shoot acid because, well, nature gave it to me. I have the why shouldn't rights go with ability? So I have the ability to kill you. I should be able to kill you without hearing any of your nuisance complaints about any of your fucking rights. And you know, with procreation, what you're basically doing is asserting a right. Okay, if you create a victim, to say fuck you, victim. Fuck you is what you're saying to anything that'll have to pay a price for your experiment. And that's what it is. It's an experiment. You have no probabilistic right or authority here. None. You have every reason to believe that your kid will come out entirely average, and even if it does that, the odds are it's going to be disabled by the time it's 50 years old. You know, in some way. And you know, we can go into all the things that are probabilistic, that it'll have to survive cancer, and it'll do this, and it'll do that. So take account for the whole game you're imposing, even if it's average. You know, and then let's recognize what happens when it's not average. And say, how do you account for your imposition, right? Because I could go with what was average during slavery. And average was a lot higher than slave life. Okay? But that doesn't account for slavery, does it? No, it doesn't. It doesn't do anything to justify the fact that you're exploiting 1% of your population or 2% or 3% in some horrific manner to live very well. And that there's an intrinsic flaw in that diagram in terms of not only fairness but consent. And again, because the game you're playing doesn't provide the opportunity to consent, doesn't give you immunity from the implications that you're going to violate it. You're violating consent. Now you want to just claim, well, I couldn't possibly get consent. Well, that doesn't change the fact that you didn't get it. And it is important that if you're going to do something when you can't get consent, if I can't get somebody's consent to do something, like if I'm going to go gamble with their mortgage, right? I get their mortgage from the bank and the equity in their house. So I get a loan on the equity on their house, and I go to Las Vegas with the money. Now the only way I could feel right about doing that is if I'm so goddamn confident I'm going to win for them. I'd have to have a ton of evidence that it's all winning potential, that this is about as fail-safe as the sun being hot. It's fail-safe. There's no way I can fuck this up, right? Or I'm not going to do it, am I? Reasonably, logically, sensibly, can I think of any way I could justify asserting that positive right if I don't have absolute fail-safe certainty without consent? So that's your obligation. When you can't get consent, not from any fault of your own, it's just the way nature made the game, right? You can't get consent, all right? Does that change the fact that you should be absolutely certain about what's going to happen here? That you should have plans you should have everything, all the bases covered. Okay, not just to this minimal basis. Well, I have $53 in the bank. You know, I'm reasonably healthy. I might live 5 more years. You know, what guarantees are you giving for even your capacity to provide the normal obligations of parenthood, let alone you have no expectation that you're immune to the kid being born with some horrific genetic disorder that will blight it horribly for all of its existence. None whatsoever. You have no immunity to any of that. And yet you're asserting this right. And I'm saying that is as obnoxious and rude as somebody stealing my money because they're confident and gambling it away in Las Vegas. I mean, it's just as rude. It's just as obnoxious. It's just as arrogant. It has nothing to do with morality or ethics or decency. It has everything to do with things very contrary to any notion of fairness or any notion of respect or any notion of consent. And these assholes don't want to take any responsibility, so they exempt themselves from responsibility by saying, I didn't make a baby. I didn't make something that will be conscious. I will ignore the will be part. I will claim immunity because my car, even with its bad brakes, hasn't run anybody over yet. So the fact that it hasn't run anybody over yet means I can keep driving it until it does. It is that kind of nonsense logic. You I don't fall over the cliff until I run over the cliff, so therefore, even if I'm running right for the cliff, I'm going to be flying over the cliff. I don't have to concede that this plan won't work, that I will fall over the cliff. Stupid. So anyway, so I'll sum up. I mean, I don't want to get into it. Like I said, I'd like to, but I would like to mock him in some way. Just be as derogatory. Like I presume he's going to quit smoking, right? He smokes in his house. You can't really do that with a pregnant woman around, right? The law should come and get you because you don't have the right to do that. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm going to sort of enjoy watching him deteriorate and suffer, just because this is such a. I mean, this decision happens in the context where, like I said, I mean, I was arguing this anti-nihilism with stuff with him over a year ago. So obviously this was a choice he made, a decision he overtly made, to take on this imposition, to impose, to say, I'm worth it, I have the competence, I have the control, I have the authority. And all I see is he might have the penis. I don't know. Who knows? You don't even need one nowadays, right? And that's all he has. Apparently he does have, genetic material that he was capable of putting into somebody else's cells. And therefore he has the right to do it. Because he has the stuff, he has a right to make babies. Because they have the oven, they have a right to cook whatever the fuck they want. And that's a nothing argument. It's a zero argument of any kind of right or entitlement. Certainly asserting a positive right in that circumstance is just ludicrous. You have to have a lot more than everybody else is doing it. That doesn't work. So what's your defense of your positive right to risk the welfare of a sentient being by creating it? What is your defense beyond everyone else is doing it, and nature gave me the tool, therefore I have a right to use it any way I fucking want? You don't have anything. There's no logic here. You're not applying logic. You just did a selfish motherfucking cunt bastard idiotic thing, something totally outside the realm of anything that could be logically defended as a good risk, and you did it for no good reason, but besides the fact that you're just a selfish fuck. Yeah. And yeah, that's it. And well, I guess you did it based on the fact that you seem to think that you can just make up the truth, and you can pretend that the downside risk was worth it because I'm going to be lucky. So we'll see if you're lucky first, and if you're unlucky, let's see what kind of rationalizations you use to justify your behavior. Yeah, really. But anyway, the subject is words, and so I was just thinking about the word rights. And like I say, you go with the word right, and then you have entitlements, and then you have this idea. Fairness and consent are the big ones for me, because those are gameplay type words. Games are defined. The integrity of a game is defined by how fair it is to the combatants. That's really the nature of it. And fairness comes down to deserve and earn. These are really interesting words. What have we earned by being sentient? You earn something by being sentient. You don't have to do anything else besides being sentient. If I have a little fluffy feeling rabbit in a glass bowl, separate from everything, it's earned something just by being a feeling thing. It's earned respect for the fact that it can be harmed. The fact that you can be harmed earns you something. It earns you an entitlement to a certain kind of respect. And that's the right, the entitlement that these people are rejecting. They're saying their wish to gamble overwhelms your right not to be gambled with. So anyway, but there's so many words. So objective ends up being absolute, right? So when you're talking about objective ethics or morality, you're really just talking about absolute, that there's some universal. There's another word. So it's absolute, it's universal, it's ultimate, it's perfect, it's accurate. These are all, there's just so many words connected to the concept that you can't just take the concept as a one word. We have to do this definition, and the definition does get incredibly, we have way too many words saying too similar a thing in too different a way. I mean, it just is so bad that our language is this broken. What does proven mean? You know, what is qualified? What is substantiated by evidence? You know, logical, rationally defensible. You know, this is what makes something mean something. And the argument is that I think there is an absolute factual reality that we're existing in, and it does have value in it because consciousness is in it. Consciousness creates value. The experience of consciousness has a substance that is quite distinct from this substance, and it's not distinct because of, you know, whether it's made out of plastic or whether it's made out of biology. It's distinct in that this does not possess a welfare. It does not possess the capacity to be harmed. The capacity to experience negative conscious experience is a significant reality in the universe. It is the significant reality in the universe. It may well be the only significant reality in the universe, as I would argue, and that everything else is just minimizing that negative condition, trying to break that down, and that all definitions of efficiency by value equation, by productivity, by value equation, are all based on that premise that suffering and minimizing it is the objective. And perfect is the absence of it. So anyway, I think I've done my job substantially. But yeah, these words really got to be worked on. So, you know, Poodle Susan's video is a good video. Like I said, it's a little bit wordy. But this is these arguments might as well just stop. You know, as soon as somebody says something, describe rights that exist free of laws. You know, you're just breaking the idea of rights. You know, you're just breaking the very notion that somebody can claim a right that isn't being respected. And so what they're claiming is, let's change the word to entitlement. They're claiming an entitlement. And when the entitlement is respected, it's called a right. And when it's not respected, it's called a violation of rights. And I claim that the victims of your game playing, in terms of procreating, have entitlements you're violating. And it's like I say, it may not be a malicious violation, but it just doesn't matter. It's an overt violation. It's an overt taking of control and saying you somehow know what to do with their welfare. And you have absolutely nothing to defend your claim that you know. You have not sufficient probabilistic evidence of your capacity not to impose in a to create a substantially negative impact. Just as if I build a shoddy nuclear power plant and turn it on in my backyard, I violated your entitlement to oblige me, your right to oblige me, not to do something stupid, selfish, idiotic. My right to give birth to a bad nuclear power plant is just as non-existent as your right to create human beings. That's the truth of it.